We covered the simple fleshy fruits, but it's not always so simple, so we kind of have to go over that. So we're going to go over that right now as far as other types of fruits. I'm going to start with a couple different types of fruits that are actually what we call compound fruits. Okay, that's where you have a composition or a composite of fruits together. So let's take a look at a couple examples of these. So one type of compound fruit is what we call an aggregate fruit over here. And these are going to be what we see with things like black raspberries and our raspberries, which are absolutely delectable. One of my all-time favorite berries, no doubt, loaded with antioxidants. When it comes to aggregates, I think it goes without saying, why am I teaching it as a compound fruit? Well, here's why, folks. We have many individual, what we call drupelets, okay? Drupelets, yes, it's spelled just like droop, meaning inside of each one of these absolutely tiny fruit chambers is indeed its own drupe, okay? So that's what we're looking at as far as aggregates. They actually come from one flower, okay? So one flower, again, will produce an aggregate. One flower, many pistils. In fact, on many raspberries, when you look very closely, it's not uncommon to see the remnants of the styles poking out. Especially like those delicious red raspberries that you'll get at the supermarket. It's not uncommon at all that if you look really closely, you can see some of the slight hair-like projections left over from the styles, okay? And you can kind of see one of my fingernails pointing at it. So that's looking at, again, how many flowers, guys, to give us an aggregate? Just one, right? And that's what we mean by compound, because obviously it's lots of drupelets put together to give us that delectable, amazing fruit, okay? But the plot thickens a little bit. Sometimes it's actually where you get multiple fruit, again, fused into one large compartment, but it came from multiple flowers. So thinking about what we talked about in lecture, my favorite example is a pineapple, okay? Each one of those chambers, the sepals is opened up, and eventually as it ripens, those fuse, and then you have one delicious multiple fruit that came from multiple flowers. So the name is very fitting. Multiple fruit comes from multiple flowers. Another very common example of this is the fig, okay? Figs actually are derived from multiple flowers as well, not just the awesome pineapple, which as it turns in isn't in season right now. Now let's look at another example of something that might confuse you. Earlier, I just taught you guys that blackberries and raspberries, despite the name that they have berry in the name, are actually aggregate fruits. Well, guess what? Another confusing name is strawberry. Strawberries are almost entirely swollen receptacle, meaning technically stem tissue. When you're eating strawberries, very little of that is actually true fruit, which is another confusing thing. Everything you learn at the supermarket's wrong. As you just learned, blackberries and raspberries are not true berries, nor are strawberries. In fact, let's look up closer, guys. They're what we botanists oftentimes call a pseudocarp, where you have this fleshy hypanthium, that's this red receptacle tissue. If this were actually in flower, these are the sepals back here. And then as the flower has had all of the advancements that it's had throughout its lifetime and then eventually swells and ripens, what you see here is this is all receptacle tissue that is swollen. And it's delectable for those of us that love them because that's going to help aid in dispersal. But the actual fruits are right here. On the very outside of this strawberry are these tiny little grits. Those are the only part of this that's actually true fruit, right? Meaning that's actually the part that is the ovary. And the special term for these are called achenes, which you can see here on all my note cards, guys. All my note cards are exceedingly helpful for you guys listing this stuff down and learning it. All right, so guess what? Those are our exciting fleshy fruits. Sometimes we have fruits that are also very important that we have to discuss, and these are going to be our dry fruits, and they tend to fall into different categories based on whether or not they open at maturity to lose their seeds. So we're going to discuss a couple that are in that category that open up at full maturity to release their seeds. The special term for that, as outlined in your guide for today, is what we call dehiscent, okay? So let's take a look at an example here. One dehiscent dry fruit type is what we call a capsule, okay? So a capsule, such as you would find from a poppy flower, when all the petals have fallen off, you're going to see this amazing ovary swell and then eventually dry out. And what happens then, as you guys can see very closely here on the side, this will eventually completely allow all these seams here at the top. They're going to open up and allow those seeds again to disperse and escape. Okay, so that's what you guys see there with the capsule. Okay, now let's go into this way, the silique. The silique is actually going to be something that we eat a lot of in our diets, meaning those of us that love mustard as much as I do, and the mustard family is prolific with a fruit type known as siliques. And these largely open up, these little seed pods open up. This is not technically a legume though, folks, so keep that in the back of your mind. It's long and slender, so think sleek silique. And this kale silique that I popped out of my garden, again, is a great dispersal mechanism for it, protects it, and then this will open up at maturity, okay? So that's going to be looking at an example of siliques. And again, like I just spoke of, the condiment mustard, which is in the same family, obviously, comes from very similar pods to this, okay? So inside of that are the precious seeds. Probably one of my ultimate favorite of all, folks, are going to be the legumes, right? So whether we're looking at the green bean or wax bean right out of my garden, these are a couple examples of legumes, and the reason why they are, as well as the beloved peanut, is because these are special dehiscent dry fruits that crack along two seams at maturity to, again, disperse the babies. And here's baby one and there's baby two, right? So yummy. Now, some seeds, or some fruits rather, they do not open up at maturity to lose their seeds. And that's going to be these four right here, guys, okay? So I got these nice four groups laid out here. These are ones that do not open up at maturity, and so we use the term indehiscent for those, okay? One example here is going to be something that didn't fall too far from the tree, and that's going to be an acorn. From our beloved oak trees, and that is technically where you have a hard, stony pericarp. It's as hard as nails, as you guys can see there. And that hard, stony pericarp, as the botanical definition of a nut, throws everybody off. Here's why. I love to eat nuts, but when I say I'm really eating nuts, what am I actually enjoying in my diet? Yeah, that's the seed. We technically in botany don't eat the nuts. Here's why. The nut is literally that hard, stony pericarp. And I don't know anybody that wants to go busting up their teeth on that. So when you're enjoying things like the seeds inside of a walnut, the seeds inside of an almond, or whatever it is you're enjoying, yeah, you're not actually eating the shell, right? So that doesn't split open. Nor do things like rice. Granted, this has already had some of its protective areas removed. Or corn. This is a caryopsis. We're going to talk a lot about these throughout the semester. Samaras coming from your maple tree. These are those silly helicopter seeds that come out. Absolutely, this is a fantastic example of another indehiscent dry fruit. You all know how good these things are at dispersal, right? And here you guys can see inside of this is actually a winged akene, would be the lovely seed then for dispersal of, let's say, that beloved sugar maple that gives us maple syrup. And lastly, I'll leave you with one of the ultimate snack foods of all time. That is the sunflower akene. Again, the seeds directly germinate right out of the pericarp there. So a nice little look at these fruits for collective diversity of the plant kingdom. I think it's good that we get a handle on all these different devices that plants can use to disperse themselves.